from the BBC World Service in association with ABC and All India Radio. This is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Alison Mitchell in London, taking a leaf out of my co-host Charu Sharma's book this week and looking forward to a school reunion dinner at the weekend. There'll be some people I haven't seen for some 15 years, but I imagine there'll be a lot of sporting chat. It's the bond that holds a lot of us together, but very much looking forward to that one.
Hi, it's Jim Maxwell for the ABC in Sydney. If it's not raining, it's sunny here in town. But around the country, the Sheffield Shield continues, despite the fact that the old pigskin is being booted around the country at the start of the AFL and rugby league seasons. And who knows who's going to play in the final against Victoria. But New South Wales have got their hands full down in Hobart. We shall see. Next weekend, the final will be played at the Junction Oval in Melbourne.
Good to be back on the show. I'm Charu Sharma for All India Radio in Bangalore. After missing out for a couple of weeks, spent largely on participating in a seniors golf tournament up north and watching India take their foot off the pedal and go down to Australia in the ODI series. I wonder how they'll live that one down.
Good to have you with us, Charu. Feels like it's been a little while. And actually, I want to start, though, talking to you about the Indian Premier League, because the 12th edition of the men's biggest T20 franchise tournament in the world starts this weekend. First up, a heavyweight clash between last year's champions, the Chennai Super Kings, and the serial underachievers, Royal Challengers Bangalore. In other words, it's MS Dhoni versus Virat Kohli. That's not a bad opening match, Charu, is it?
Sumptuous, without doubt. Now, I just wonder if the rest of the country is waking up to it all, but the media is certainly climbing onto the IPL bandwagon because, well, just anywhere, particularly in the newspapers, in the electronic media as well, there's all IPL. And yeah, you mentioned a good one, Dhoni versus Virat Kohli. Already, I think Gautam Gambhir came out with a statement saying Kohli ought to be grateful to be still with the Royal Challengers Bangalore and captain because they haven't done much and under his captaincy for the last 6-7 years. Serial underachievers, I don't know. They've reached the final several times, so you've got to say they've done very well, just haven't won the trophy. But even the Chennai franchise has a lot to prove because, as you know, they and Rajasthan were away for a couple of years, getting this very stiff rap on the knuckles. But they're back and with lots to prove. So, yeah, it should be a mouth-watering contest to begin with. There's also a lot of buzz about the fact that despite the national elections of India this year, somehow almost all the teams have had all the matches at home and made available. So that's very good for the teams because you don't want to play your home matches in some other distant city and then call it a home match. All things good so far, so good. We're waiting for it to start and should be a fabulous start to what we do know is the biggest tournament of the world, despite the fact that ICC wanted a bit of a hand in it. But so far, the IPL's kept away.
Now, Jim, I know the IPL isn't shown on mainstream free-to-air TV in Australia and it can fly under the radar a little bit, but there's a host of Australians playing and coaching in the event, aren't there? And probably, I thought, a little bit more interest than normal this year, given the involvement of Steve Smith and David Warner, both in it after their ball tampering bans expired, and, of course, the fact that the World Cup's around the corner.
I think the interest, because it will be on pay-per-view TV, it'll be there. But unfortunately, as they discovered when free-to-air ran the IPL some years ago, it's on too late. You know, most people have gone to bed, so unless they're recording it, they're probably not watching it. But there is the attraction of Smith and Warner in particular, particularly Smith coming back from his elbow injury. And really, it is a net session to prove his fitness for the World Cup, and I guess the same for Warner. So that does get a few eyeballs gazing at it, but it's all about the footy here. I mean, AFL is a bit like Premier League soccer. It's somewhere between an obsession and a disease, depending on your point of view.
And it takes up most of the back pages, doesn't it? Which is great for those AFL fans who want to lap up every single kick. Well, another Australian who is involved in the IPL this year is Shane Warne. He's an ambassador for the Rajasthan Royals. And listen to this. He expects Smith and Warner to hit the ground running.
I think Smith and Warner will come back very, very strong. I think they'll be hungry. I think they'll be determined. They'll be out there to say, this is how good I am. I've missed this game. They want to show how much they missed the game. They want to show how good they are. So I expect them to come back pretty well.
When they were reunited with their Australian colleagues in Dubai, there was apparently quite a lot of hugging.
Was there?
Yeah, it was quite an emotional scene apparently.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, would you have been hugging and cuddling them in the same way?
Yes. I mean, if that was the mood, and these days when you say hello to a mate, whether it's a male or female, you'll give them a, how you going, man?
But my point is that you'd have been happy to embrace
welcome with open arms.
Yes.
Welcome them with open arms, absolutely. These guys, they're not bad people. They just made a mistake, and they're class players. Australia, anytime you can have that class back in your side, you welcome it. And I think it was nice of the Australian side to say, boys, you're part of us. You're welcome to the group. We're looking forward to playing with you again. I think that's a good thing.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on All India Radio.
Next, it's the start of an exciting new segment on Stumped, our Cricket World Cup countdown. It's 10 weeks until the start of the Men's World Cup in England and Wales, and we're going to be building up to the tournament by revealing our top 10 matches in reverse order. Jim, Charu and I have been raking through our collective memory banks and have come up with a list of matches that includes some seismic upsets, some incredible finishes, and games for which the significance resonated far beyond the game of cricket. I have to say, guys, I quite enjoyed sitting down and putting this list together. It certainly brought back a lot of memories of matches gone by. How was it for you?
It was good fun, and I'm sure I left one or two out in trying to rake over the historical coals of this competition. But I think we've tended to come back on the finals as the big games, and there have been some memorable ones and a few others as well. So it'd be interesting to know what the fans think of our selection.
Well, it's bound to stir up a fair amount of controversy, but you say 1 or 2, Jim. I say maybe 10 or 12 we missed out because there's so many exciting matches. But I must quickly confess that, Alison, just purely personally, I was much more concerned about, or in terms of a criteria, of the overall significance of certain matches. Maybe they weren't quite so exciting as some other ones, which I've left out. But some matches just had a huge bearing on their nation or what it did to the nation and so on and so forth. So maybe that was a little skew from my side.
And there's certainly all going to be personal choices, aren't they, that we each put in our decisions. It's been whittled down to a sort of joint collective effort, but I'm sure that our memories are strengthened or weakened depending on, for a start, whether we were actually there at the match, whether some of us were even alive when some of these matches took place. So, without further ado, it's time for...
Number 10.
Number 10 in our shortlist of the greatest World Cup matches is the semi-final of the 2015 World Cup between South Africa and New Zealand in Auckland, with both teams desperate to reach their first ever final. South Africa batted first and made 281 for 5 in an innings reduced to 43 overs by rain. What followed was a roller coaster of a run chase in which the fortunes of both teams fluctuated, with the outcome in the balance right up to the final over. And then this happened.
Now, 4 required. Steyn bowls, and it's swung away, and that's going for 6, and that's the match. Grant Elliott takes New Zealand to the World Cup final for the first time ever, and look at the celebrations around the ground. It's as though they've won the World Cup. They're off to Australia, and Grant Elliott, he has put Steyn, the world premier fast bowler, into the stand, and New Zealand have won by 4 wickets with 1 ball to spare.
Grant Elliott, welcome to Stumped. I don't know about you, I've got goosebumps listening to that clip. I mean, how does that make you feel 4 years on, just hearing that described, and that noise as well?
Yeah, it brings back good memories. It's nice to be able to sort of, I guess, exit the game with a good memory, because cricket is one of those games where there's a lot of failure in between those good moments. So it's nice to have it sort of towards the end of my career, which is, it's amazing. We had such an awesome team and a great campaign.
Let's rewind a bit to the start of your run chase, because you needed 298 in 43 overs after a Duckworth-Lewis adjustment for rain. So that must have felt like some ask at that point.
We were actually quite fortunate because the rain came down at the 42nd over, 43rd over, or whatever it was during the innings when AB was still in. And the South African batters, they had a good foundation and they were ready to, take on the small Eden Park field. And unfortunately, rain came down. For us, it was great. The rain came down and then we came out to bat and had a sort of revised total, which did seem like a bit of an ask at that time. But that with 290 and having played at Eden Park as well, as long as you don't let it get above 10 and over, you've always got a bit of a chance.
Moves into bowl to McCullum, who hits him high towards us. This is going way over the rope and long on for 6. It drops just beneath us and then bounces around.
And of course, the team did get off to a good start because there was a quick 50 from the captain, Brendan McCullum. Just how big a figure was he for the team throughout that tournament?
Yeah, well, I spoke about the culture that we had within the team, and I think that was driven by Brendan. He led by actions and the way that he batted during that tournament. I think he scored a 21 ball 100 against England, or 19 ball 50 against England, and he really did set the tone. First ball of the tournament, he hit over extra cover for 4, so he batted with no fear, and that innings was instrumental in that run chase, because it meant that when we came in the middle order, we were chasing 6, 7 and over, which, and that's one boundary and over. So it was very gettable, and it meant that we didn't have to take much risk through the middle.
And that partnership between you and Corey Anderson was really key, wasn't it? You put on 103 together. What do you remember much of that stand? I mean, when you're in that sort of partnership in such a big game, is there much that's said to each other, for example, out in the middle?
I think when you're chasing 6 and over, when you got 139 off 22, it's just kind of like, it's not mayhem yet, but you can still get yourself in, and you can let that run rate climb a little bit, but you also don't want to leave it to, too late, like, the last over. So when Corey and I were batting together, we knew that was an important partnership, and he played a good hand, and it was unfortunate he got out when he did, because then I think when he got out, then the pressure was really on.
So Anderson was dismissed. Luke Ronke followed soon after, but you were still there, although only just.
Morkel rushing into bowl to Elliott, heaves this high in the air. He could well be caught. A deep back with square leg fielder getting underneath it. Oh, they collide. 2 fielders collide. The ball is gone loose, and they run back for 2 runs. What a let-off.
Oh, hearts and mouth stuff. What do you remember of that moment? That was Duminy and Behardina who collided in the field.
Yeah, well, that's not my fault.
You must have been pretty relieved, though.
Yeah, no, massive relief. But I think the amazing thing about Eden Park is how loud it is. You literally can't hear yourself in the middle. It feels like, because it's so elevated and more of a rugby ground, it feels like, there's people shouting just above you. So no doubt that was probably something that played the part in that collision or whatever happened out there at square leg, but it was fortuitous for us.
Well, the noise was building. It did go down to the final over. So Dan Vittori hits a 4, then a bye puts you on strike. You're facing Dale Steyn, arguably the premier fast bowler in world cricket. A 4 would take you through to the final because of your superior run rate. So what on earth made you try and smash him into the stands? I mean, it came off.
Well, I just thought, to be honest, I haven't had the best of press over my time. And I thought, if I don't do this, I'll be that guy that lost the semi-final for New Zealand. And you box into the corner. That's probably the most pressure I've had in my career in terms of a single moment, because it is literally 0-0. And as you said with the calculation, I knew that, we needed 4, so 2 balls to go. You definitely try to get at that ball. I've been in the position before where I've left it to the last ball, and that's not a very nice position to be in. So, yeah, just, wherever the ball was at that stage, I was going to have a go at it. And fortunately for me, it was in a good position. And, yeah, the rest is a lot of relief. Like, everyone says, oh, you must have been so happy. And if anything, I was really relieved. The thing that made me happiest is when you see your teammates. And I think, your teammates, and you realise that New Zealand's reached the final for the first time is a pretty amazing moment. And to share that moment with, guys that, all want to pull together and try and achieve what seemed unachievable at the start of the tournament is a pretty awesome feeling.
Oh, an incredible feeling indeed. That was former New Zealand batsman Grant Elliott speaking to me earlier this week. Jim, where were you when that match took place and bubbled up to that incredible final? Because, of course, it set up New Zealand to then play Australia in the World Cup final.
I was back home in Australia watching it on TV. And I remember during that partnership, De Villiers missed a run out. with Anderson and Elliott when they were scoring that century partnership. That was another critical moment. So for South Africa, everyone says as they reflect on their record in the World Cup, they're a mob of chokers. But, you've got to grab those moments, and whether it's bad luck or miscalculation, misjudgment, there it is. 4 semi-finals. They've lost 3 and they've tied 1. So when's it going to turn for them? It did beautifully for New Zealand, but as we know, Australia was far too good in the final. But the atmosphere, it was like a rugby match because of the intimate nature of the Eden Park. Quite extraordinary, the atmosphere there.
Charu, what are your memories of watching that semi?
Well, extreme sympathy, if I can say so, for South Africa. And not just because of that one match, obviously, but as you said, both were looking for a place in the final. And my mind instantly went back to 1992, and I still remember Brian McMillan's cowling, dejected visage when they had to suddenly score 22 in one ball compared to 22 in 13. And I said, oh gosh, how maybe bad luck is dodging them. And Dale Steyn, one of the finest bowlers in the world, although at that stage perhaps he might have been on the lower end of his magnificent scale, but to be hit for a 6 and to let the team down in that manner, I don't know what must have been going through his mind at that point of time. And also, of course, that ridiculous tie that and in fact a tie instead of what they thought was a win in 2003, where there was so much home pressure on them. If you remember that match where they misread the whole par score controversy or misunderstanding and were left in a tie rather than a win. So they've had the rough end of the luck scale in the World Cup particularly. And then, of course, the whole world continues to call them chokers and what have you. I just remember feeling very sorry for South Africa. And I don't mean to take sides or be biased, but great that New Zealand got into a final. I don't know whether South Africa could have beaten Australia 2015 and actually won. Maybe they were the better side.
Well, that's all for this week's Stumped on All India Radio. You can keep in touch with us throughout the week on Twitter. We're at BBCWS Sport with the hashtag BBC Stumped. Thanks to my teammates Jim Maxwell and Charu Sharma, and to you for listening. We'll be back at the same time next week. Bye-bye.
Stumped is a BBC sport production for the BBC World Service in association with the Australian Broadcasting Corporation and All India Radio.